Good afternoon, folks. Welcome all to the session on purely on malware analysis, specifically for the Windows. So what we are going to talk about is the service events and the task scheduler, specifically on Windows. If you ask me that all this, what we are going to discuss doesn't happen on Mac or Linux, yeah, it doesn't matter what platform it is. Only the kind of privileges, what it helps to activate it, that's what matters. So what all we are going to discuss today, it might happen on Linux or Mac, but it depends on what privileges we have and how the malware gets into the network. So that's how it revolves around. But what we are going to talk today is purely on Windows Service Scheduler and service events as well as the task scheduler, right? So yeah, myself, SatheeshPandurangan. So I have 15 years of experience in the networking and the web security industry. So, yeah, that's a short intro about me, myself. Yeah, let's move on. So yeah, what's malware? So since we are going to talk about the persistence, we'll discuss about the basics. So what's malware? Malware is nothing but an malicious process that enters into your system and compromise your system by hiding the process or hiding what it does. So that's kind of a malware. There are different kinds of technologies or different kinds of malware scenarios are there. Maybe it can be a ransomware, or it can be a rootkit, or it can be an keylogger or spyware, anything. So it depends on the attacker's mindset, what he wants to do. Right? Uh, he wants to look into your analyze your system for a prolonged time period. He can do spyware. He wants to track your passwords. He can do keylogger. Or you want to do ransom, he'll do for ransomware. It depends on what kind of activities he wants to do. So malware is one of the main process which helps to hack the systems on your endpoint devices and take the control of the machine and get what are the information that the attacker is looking, right? And yeah, so when we are talking about malware, we need to talk about persistence. So there are different steps in malware. So malware, like first you need to do the reconnaissance, and then you need to get into the network. And once it is done, you need to do privilege escalation to escalate your privileges to an admin or higher level privileges. And once it is done, what you do, you need to stay within the network to make sure that you are staying in the network for a prolonged time period so that you can do all the activities what you are planning to do. So for that purpose, we need to maintain persistence. Persistence is like you are hiding yourself within the system so that no one is able to understand, or no one knows that there is a malware within our system. They are trying to record or swiping off all the data within the system. So that's called persistence. So what are the different methodologies of persistence that happens in the Windows system? One is like registry run keys. Registry run keys are nothing but the registry keys within the system, which is a configuration for OS operating system and the softwares which can be managed, and startup folder. Startup folder is whenever we bring up the system, what are all the applications that starts along with the startup folder, be it a browser or calculator or any other application. Once you logs in, it will automatically start. So during that time, the malware attacker can able to pitch in the process so that once the user logs in, the malware automatically starts. It doesn't need an extra push to start it manually. So other one is scheduled task, which we are going to discuss in detail right now, and Windows services, which we are going to discuss it. And the next one is boot key. So boot key is like not previously as compared to other persistent methodologies. The boot key happens at the kernel level where input output exploitation or the memory analysis, it happens at the core hardware level where it is difficult to understand or difficult to identify what kind of malware it is, whether it's there or not. Even if you go through with the tools or any hardware, like hardware related tool, it's very difficult to identify. So boot key execution, it's similar to rootkits. Like rootkits and boot key, both of them are happening at the hardware level or at the memory level, which is difficult to identify. And app init DLLs are the dynamic link loader file, which is helpful for the configuration files in our system, in our Windows system, right? So if you want to modify anything on the system, once you modify it, all this modification changes will go into the DLL files. So if the attacker tries to modify them, no one knows about it. And the last one is fileless malware. Fileless malware is basically execution happens directly on the memory, right? So memory debugging is a split process together. That's pretty complex to identify malware. So if you look into that bottom four, it's difficult to identify the malware is present in your system or not. If it is on the top four, with some of the tools and technologies what we have, we can able to correlate it and identify there's some malware sitting in our environment. So it depends on what kind of technologies we use and how we manipulate it. That's what we are going to do it now. Okay. So the next thing is lol bins. Lol bins are nothing but the living off the land. So in Windows, there are many utilities, common utilities are there, which helps the IT admins to make the process easy enough in a day-to-day life. Maybe everyone known about the PowerShell, right? Windows PowerShell. PowerShell is used for executing any scripts or tracking any of the log files, like log files or remote connections, anything that can be done. If the same thing can be done by an attacker, right? It's the same privileges. Only thing is the differentiation is whether it has been run by the IT admin or by the attacker, right? If he is having the privileges, he can escalate it to the higher privileges using the PowerShell. So lol bins or living off the land are some of the genuine Windows system files which can be used by the malware attacker for his own purpose, like escalated. So it is a normal system which is existing. It is already present in the system. You don't need to install it. It's already present in the system. Right? So lol bins are pre-installed and they are legitimate. Legitimate in the sense it's provided by Microsoft itself. You don't need to do anything, right? And it's flexible. Flexible. It's like you can execute a script or you can do a remote desktop connection or you can download files and auto execute it. All the things can be happen in the lol bins. So these are all the files that the malware attackers trying to use and bring it up to install or malware and be persistence into the network. So some of the common or well-known lol bins are PowerShell, the registries or PS executables. Cert utils is specifically for certificate management, and run DLL is for the DLL files and schedule tasks. So these are all the some of the main key points that most of them will use for. But if you want to, there are about hundreds of system internal files that are part of Windows, which can be used for any purpose. So if you look into what are all the list of files or list of uh, the system internals, the link is over there. There you'll see the couple of like hundreds of entries over there. So these are all genuine files. If you install it, IT admin will think that they are all the genuine process which might be running on based on the requirement, right? But only the malware knows that they are utilizing that genuine process for installing the malware. Okay, let's jump in about Windows services. So what is Windows service? Let's say I want to install a software. I want to install an antivirus agent. Software, it's an antivirus agent. What you look at is a beautiful UI. But in the back end, it will be called as a service and it will be installed on the system. So whenever you boot the system, this Windows service will automatically run and start up so that you don't need any interruption for manually starting. There are some processes which you can manually start, but most of the Windows processes would be automatically started. You don't need to worry about it, right? So that's one of the main persistence mechanism where the malware authors use it. So what is this like? We know that we install some software. Let's say if we install the antivirus and the malware attacker tries to spin up another process similar to the malware files, like malware files in the sense, antivirus files, and let's say we are installing McAfee. The service name is called McAfee.exe, and the malware attacker also says that just malware like McAfee1.exe or 123, or he can rename it something like McAfee extension.exe. So do we get any doubts on it? No. Or if he can also name it as McAfee.exe, he may not be having a doubt, thinking that it's a genuine process, right? So he can manipulate that environment, that malicious file, and run into the service. So that's how they can enter into the persistent method. So why are they doing it? Main thing is it is mainly used for the lateral movement, like hiding into the system and spread it inside your organization, spread it inside your systems within the network, and staying undercover. How long you are able to stay undercover even after the reboot or even after the user logs in multiple times. That's a advantage of being malware being into the network. Like try to collect or gather more information into the system, right? So that's a one. And where you can look into all the services that are running in your system. You can go to this path and you can check it out. what are all the services that are running. Obviously, you may not be able to see all the services, like thinking like what it might be. It, the naming convention might be different, but so if you want to look into the service, this is the default UI that would be shown when you're looking to service. There will be hundreds of services will be there, and it will be saying whether it is automatically triggered or manually triggered, whether it's local system or it is triggered by an external person. And you want to look into the service, let's say the storage service, what it does and how it starts, and whether you want to do any recoveries and all those things would be listed over here, right? So same way, instead of storage service, I'll say that storage undergo service. Do we able to detect it whether it's a genuine process or it's a malicious process? No, right? So that's how the malware attacker is trying to play into that one. So this is a way to access Windows service, and you can access it via CLI also. There is another inbuilt tool called AutoRun. This is one of the tools which is provided by the Windows to get into that. Like previously, we have seen only the Windows service, and this tool is provides a list of services for multiple services. Like you have anything on the logon, it will show the list of logons it has done and scheduled tasks, services, and what are the changes that is happening in the drivers or boot execute. All the list of most critical processes that is there in the system. This is one tool which will help you to list all the things in the single tool itself. Okay. So this is one of the uh, basic picture of what happens when you're creating the service, right? So when you're creating the service, uh, it gets registered into the specific path like HPLM system under the services, and how it gets executed. There are four different methodologies. One is PowerShell. You can use PowerShell to trigger an malware services, and another one is scheduled service task. So this is we are going to discuss it later. And WMI is the Windows management instrumentation. That is one of the older technology which is used for remote connections. Obviously, most of the malware threats might be entered into your network via remote connections or phishing attacks, right? And the last one is Windows 32 API. It's a older technology, but not many people are using it. So mostly how it enters into your network is PowerShell and se.exe. Right? That is what we are going to look into it now. And how we can detect it. Like let's say if there is a malware that is there in your system, how we can detect it. So every system will have an event logs, like log systems. So when you're trying to analyze that log system, you can try to correlate what is happening in your network. So there will be something called security logs and system logs, and there will be a specific event tag with all these persistence attacks. So we'll be discussing in depth about all those event IDs, what we need to look for specifically if there is a malware into our environment. So these are all the steps that when the service creation happens, that getting processed, right? Any questions here? So the creation, how does it get created, and when it is getting created, how it is getting detected, right? Yeah. It's there, but not all the services are provided that mechanism. Yeah, some of the services are the certificate authority based. You provide the certificate, genuine certificates saying who you are. Then it says that, yeah, I can validate the author who has signed it to the services. Then I can allow that. But not all the organizations has implemented it. And it's a bit complex because you need to give that certificate for each and every services. And it's pretty complex to maintain the certificates, and you need to renew the certificate. Yeah, it's a lot of complex process, but yeah, you can do it. But think about the massive complex. You might be having 200 services, 200 plus services in a system, and in your endpoint or in your enterprise organization, you might be having 200, let's say 500 devices. Think about the complexity that would be involved. Yeah, obviously you can do it. Maybe you can do it for some of the critical infrastructure where you want to protect your organization, like organization data. In those services, like you can specifically fine tune your configuration for cert authority based services, right? So yeah, we have discussed about the events, right? So there is an event. Let's say there is an attack happened, and the event gets recorded, and in the event log it says 4697, and it is like there is a new service getting installed. whenever a new service is getting installed, there will be an event triggered. There will be a log message that will be getting recorded on the system. That is like 4697. It is on the security log. And another log is called system log. So both of them are same. If you see that security logs, it's 4697, system logs, it's 7045. What's the difference? Like security logs and system logs are convey both the same information, but it's a different like wording, different naming convention. So security logs mainly records all the events related to your access, your permissions, your uh, your files getting deleted, anything related to your privileges, your accounts, or all those things getting recorded in the system, security logs. In case of system logs, whatever changes that is happening in your OS or applications or software, those changes would be recorded in the system logs. Yeah, you can refer both the logs, or if you are based on the scenario, you can refer to any specific logs in order to gather the data. But most of the times it would be correlated so that it would be helpful if you gather or if you look into that both the logs to get a detailed understanding. And also Sysmon logs with the event ID 12 and 3. So if you see that event ID 12, some key registry has been created or deleted, right? Or if you look into that system ID 13, that means existing system keys has been modified. So if you look into these two entries, then you can say that why we are doing it. Let's say I'm doing a process, I am running or all those things. I know what process I'm running in my system. And if some modification happens, if you get a log event on my process or my own application, yeah, you know that I'm running it. I know that what is happening. But you have never done something, or let's say you are working in Calgary and this happens in the Asian time zone, in the midnight time zone, and someone happens to do all these modifications. So that means something malicious, right? We have never done it. Your office timing is from 9 to 6 p.m. and you're in Calgary time. This happens in the Asian time zone, right? So that means something malicious, and you have never ever done it. So it is better to look into all this event logs or the services to check for whether it's a malicious entry or not. So yeah, how does it look like? So this is one of the Windows service events. So so on the left side, on the green tab, that is what the default logs it would be, like application logs. Anything specific to the application can be recorded in the application logs, security logs, setup logs, system, and forward influence. And the below ones are specific to what applications we have installed, like Intel, like whatever the applications you have installed onto that OS, you can look into it. And if you look into it, individual events, like I've done a login and the login ID is 4624. And if I've genuinely done a login, I know that it's me and this is a time zone I've logged in and this is a time I've logged in. So it says which system I've logged in, what is the laptop, and what is the domain I've logged in. And login type is fine. That means it's a successful login. So even if it is a login or there, then you can identify whether it's a successful login or it's a failed login or something is continuous failure is happening. All these things can be recorded in this one. And yeah, here are the details that it gives a complete overview about what it is and what kind of background information that is happening, right? So whatever we have seen in the previous slide, so the event ID 4697 and 7045, you can look into this in this UI. This is a only way. Like this when you're trying to look into it manually, this might be a cumbersome process. You can push all these logs into a log analyzer tool to to detect this on a schedule basis. Like if there is anything malicious process, just alert me up so that I can trying to look into it or debug more what is happening. So how we are going to do it? That's what we'll be looking into it next. Okay. So till now we have seen the services. Now, why malware authors create the malicious service? One is privilege escalation. Obviously, you get into the network. That's not you get into a user. You get into a like normal user. Normal user doesn't have any higher privileges or the root privileges, right? I want root privileges so that I can travel or do the lateral movement into other networks or into the data center or into the critical assets, right? So that's one of the main reason for malware authors to do persistence and doing the lateral movement. It's not, it depends on the attacker. Either I want to compromise only the data center mission, which is only critical, or I want to compromise a whole network, right? It depends. So the more and more you are into the network, the more and more you are stronger presence into the network to gather more information as per the attacker's perspective. Okay. So how does it happen? Let's say I'm trying to install a file called test.exe and it is under this path. Okay, company space name. What the system does is it will first check for anything company.exe, right? Let's say I'm a malware, like I'm a malware author. I know that there would be a lots of Windows genuine folders would be there. If something is there with spaces, I can say that company.exe or that specific file name.exe, because the moment system looks for it, it will automatically execute company.exe instead of looking for the full path. So if you keep your exe file in the specific path, it will automatically execute if the user executes his own services, right? You don't need to do anything. You just need to keep them, analyze them. What can be the folder path that you need to keep it in, and just post it. It will automatically execute it. Or if there are some genuine files, the user writable service path. If there are some genuine files, you just replace the genuine service files with your own exe files, or genuine software files with your own exe files. If let's say there is an McAfee software, no, not McAfee, let's say anything like Mozilla software. Mozilla software is there in softwares folder. Instead of Mozilla software, I'll just go and keep my own malware file, rename as Mozilla software. So instead of executing, even the user also, if tries to execute or install Mozilla software, he will install the malicious Mozilla software as compared to the genuine file, right? And he can also modify the existing services file. So these are all some of the methodologies where he can modify or execute it into the user's network. So So this is kind of the logging events that would be recorded whenever any activity happens. Be it any service getting installed or service getting deleted, modified, or any scheduled task getting installed, or any authentication process getting created, like successful authentication or failure authentication, or if there is any login failure, continuous brute force attack is happening. All these things are getting recorded. Only thing is we should know what information is getting recorded and what is the right information for us to debug. So so each and every event information gives us a minute information like what is happening and how it is happening, so that it correlates us to debug or uh, trying to identify the malware process. Okay, so we'll discuss about this later. So how to identify the malicious service? Let's say it is already there in your environment. Okay. So one is like how to like just check whether how strong it is in your service, like how how strong, like in the sense it can able to prevail into your network or extend into your network into your entire organization, or just check for any generic services which are genuine. Like sometimes there might be some services with the name of some common names. Not all malware authors or pure like highly sophisticated. There might be some malware authors just for the namesake, just give some names, random names. From that itself, we can know that whether it's a malware file or it's a genuine file. So if it is 270, 435, you may not be installing, or not many of the genuine software processes or software applications may not be having that kind of a name. That itself, you can say that something fishy in it, right? Or in case of it, it's something, it's in the path, like $C or admin dollar or any unknown path which you see into the system, that means something fishy is happening. Or if there is a network error, let's say the persistence happens. The next thing what you need to look into is you need to look into the network logs if there is any connection to the command and control server. So command and control server is nothing but after getting established into your network, the malware files or the script files will try to connect to the malware author, that is called command and control server, to do or to understand like what is the next step? What should I do after getting into the network or after getting into the system? Whether should I do the ransomware or should I do logger, keylogger, or should I just do spyware or anything? You have a question? Like, please, like, Jacob? Yeah. So about the command and control server, right? Like, yeah. So this happens with command and control server. Most of the nowadays, with the TTPs, all the techniques and technologies, they're able to identify what are the command and control servers immediately with the DNS resolution. But what happens is one of the unique scenarios. I've seen many command and control which comes up, which pops up online once in a year, right? So how do you identify whether a command and console server or any server which you are trying to communicate is a malicious or not? That means it needs to be active enough in the online, and you need to gather what process it is going on and what it is doing. If the command and control server is online for half an hour in a whole year, how you can debug that? So this happens in many scenarios where they spin up a new server, and that new server would be coming online only once in a year. It would be doing its activity and it will go offline. It will be online for half an hour. Within half an hour, it will do its process or take over whatever it needs to be done. After that, it will go offline. You can't even search about that command and control server. So that means you never ever have any idea about what it is happening. So next time, if after a year, if the same command and control server comes up, do you have any TTPs available? No. That's one of the most ways like the malware attackers try to spin up and use it. So if given the technology, if one of the authors identify whether the command and control server is there, it might be available to all the technologies with the base of technologies. All the organization might know that this is a command and control server. But if you have a limited information, you may not be even knowing that you are talking to a command and control server and your informations are getting leaked, right? So that's kind of a tricky process that malware authors use it. So, what are the attack techniques and mitigations? One of the most important one is the remote connections. Whenever there is a system that is there, obviously you try to see a remote connection. That means something fishy is happening. Like not everyone will look for the remote connection, right? Until unless you specifically enable it, right? I want my IT admin to look into my system, so I'll just do the remote connection or give the permissions for the remote connection. But in in other scenarios, if something remote connections happening, that means there is something suspicious. So whenever there is an event ID like 5156, which is like a Windows filtering platform has entered allowed a remote connection, that means some remote connection as malware attack has happened. And 7045 followed by 7045, which is nothing but a new service has been installed. What it is like, malware attacker got into a system using the remote connection. After that, he has immediately installed a service. So that's what we try to write a script saying that if there is an event ID 5156 and there is a name, any name which you feel that's suspicious, and whatever the destination address you want to give, and the port number, and what this event ID. The event IDs are critically important. There is an there's a remote connection as well as there is a new getting service installed within 1 minute, and for the same computer name, that means something malicious, right? Remote connection, it's always malicious until others you have allowed it. So this is one of the rule which you can write it in any of the software, in any of the logging tools. Logging tools might be you can use Splunk or you can use Manage Engine, or there are lots of logging tools. I'm not recommending all these things, but these are the tools which we use regularly to debug all these attacks. So similarly, in case of a system event, so we have seen that previously the Sysmon log event ID 13 and 12, right? If there is a new event that has been generated or created, use the same rule and change it to event 13. And if it happens within the same minute and same computer name, that means it is malicious. Try to flag it up. And what are the other things that might be happening? So 4624, if there is an event ID 4624, 4624 is nothing but a successful login. Obviously, everyone does a successful login, right? Not only you, the malware authors can also do a successful login on behalf of your account, right? So if it is a 4624 and it's a successful login type 3, and followed by 4697 is the new service has been installed. There is a new login, and immediately there is a new service has been installed with the same computer name, something suspicious. Or the same thing, 4648 is the login process has been attempted with explicit credentials. So like you can give a script instead of manually typing, you can give a script to execute all the scripts. So one of the patterns, this is one of the patterns. One is remote connection, and one is there is a specific login and there is a new service that has been installed, then you need to be suspicious enough. And the next thing is, we have previously seen that the lol bins, right? So lol bins are the genuine files which will be used for the Windows process. So if you see any of these services are getting executed, C script or all the services are the genuine or most likely used, but you may not be knowing whether it is a genuine or malware author. So just try to debug it, whether it's installed at a specific time, And that might be a suspicious, might be. I'm not saying all those times it might be a suspicious, it might be. And the other thing is privilege escalation attacks. So this is one of the main thing. Like obviously they will try to escalate the privileges. As a normal user, I may not be having enough privileges. So they might try to log into your network as a general user. And after that, they will escalate your privileges to the admin user so that they can hop on to multiple missions or create another system admin login itself, which they want. It's not like whatever they want, they can make it. It's they can spin up a new admin user itself. And the suspicious paths and the execution. So we know that all these things are commonly executed paths like Windows Servicing or Windows Microsoft, Windows Defender. Those are all genuine paths. Or if you see something suspicious on these paths as a specific time period with an unknown process, that means that is suspicious path. Same thing goes for the SE. SE is also one of the not partial, one of the Windows services which gets executed easily into the network for maintaining the persistence. Yeah, I'll share this PPT later. So if you want to uh, take a note of it, like as you can refer to the PPT later to check what are the log events, like how the mitigation rules looks like, so that it will be useful for you to refer to it later. And temporary service. We all know that not many of us will use the temporary services, or any process will also won't use any temporary service. If there is anything temporary service, or if it is any modification of existing service, all these things matters a lot, right? So only thing of what you need to look for is what is the service that I'm installing, what I know into my system, what I'm installing into my system. Just do a track of it. Then if you have a track of it, then you can easily identify whether something is malicious into your system. This is not only for the enterprise, even for our personal devices also, you can do this process, right? So don't try to install any software which is shared by an external links. And this happened to myself as well. Like I tried to install one of the genuine software instead of trying to download from a genuine the UI. Let's say I want to download Mozilla. Instead of going to Mozilla, I just say that download Mozilla. The main thing, first thing is Mozilla URL will come. Below that, you'll be getting lots of external URLs, which points to Mozilla. I click the second or third URL and it downloaded the Mozilla file. But interesting, what had happened? It's a Trojan, right? It says it's a Mozilla, but inside there is a Trojan malware. After getting executed, I was not aware that I've installed a virus file, and the app it was hidden for 3 days. There was no activity into my system, and nothing was malicious. I don't see anything malicious. After the third day, it started extracting all the details. It was communicating with the command and control server and gathering the information about me. Then only I tried to identify, yeah, something fishy is happening into my system. Then I debug the services, what is happening. That time I saw that, yeah, the Mozilla.exe file, what I've installed, thought is a malicious, genuine file. It's a malicious because I tried to download it from an external URL. It's not a genuine URL. Genuine URL in the sense, not the organization's URL. They haven't tested. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, if you want to check that whether you want to know that whether you are installing a genuine software or not, check the MD5 hash. Each software will have an MD5 hash file, which says that whether the software file has been modified or not. You just go and check into that the software, whatever you have genuinely downloaded from the original URL. What is the MD5 hash? That should match with the software that you have downloaded. If it matches, then it's a genuine file. Otherwise, it's a Trojan horse. Something might be happening phishing and okay, so till now we have discussed about the services, Windows services. The next thing is Windows Task Scheduler. So how many of us schedule alarm clock reading, right? Everyone schedules alarm clock to wake up in the morning or do some scheduled task. So same thing that the Windows does. So let's say I want to execute a script at this specific time period. Or let's say I want to analyze all the logs that has happened for the whole day. I want to collect it at midnight 12 p.m. and I want to execute the logs, or I want to analyze the logs. I'll do Windows schedule task. I'll say that try to execute the script exactly at 12 a.m. every day night to analyze all the logs which is there in my system to identify if something is there, something is happening. What are the softwares installed? What are the process that is getting killed? Who has logged it? I can schedule a task and say that, yeah, go ahead and do it. I forgot about it, right? The important thing about this is like it's all happens in the background. You don't need to know. There won't be any uh, triggering events or any UIs that you can see into it, like what is happening. It all happens completely in the background. You don't even get to know any information what is happening. So that's how that's one of the next methodology that malware attackers take it. So if you want to trigger and script in the specific time period or regular intervals or any specific, like let's say I have an user login failure. If there is a user login failure, immediately schedule a script and say that what happens. Anything might be happening on this thing. So this specific tool, their malware authors are using it to try to hide themselves into the persistent methodology and execute the other tasks. Whatever we are discussing till now is like persistence. It is one of the process for the malware to be present in the system. After being persistent, they can do whatever the task they want, right? I can be a sleeper cell within the system. I can understand what is happening within the system for a long year, 1 year or 2 years, or I can immediately hack the system. Say, I want a ransom from you. It depends. So persistence is one of the methodology to be in the system, right? So task scheduler is to schedule a task at any point of time, any day. Instead of going and manually scheduling it, you are just scheduling it via the script, saying that I want to execute it at every week, Monday, midnight, 12 a.m., or early in the morning, 10 a.m., whatever it is. So how to schedule a task? You can schedule it either in the UI or in the background. So this is the UI for the task scheduler. You can go and schedule the task. These are all the default task names. And let's say it says this task schedule at 12:25 p.m. or 12:25 a.m. every day. This scheduled task will be log on whenever there is any user logs in. So it depends on what is your requirement. Based on your requirement, you can create a task and who created it, what was it last run, and when it will next run, and all these things would be detailed over here. So if you look into it, if you see anything malicious, if you see something suspicious in this one, that can be a malicious process which you can debug it. And where to look for? So in the Windows, we can look into the system 32 tasks. All the tasks would be listed over here. Or if you want to look into the registry files, what are the tasks you are getting created, that would also be recorded in the registry files, which malware authors mostly do to modify and be persistent in the system. And whatever happens, like same way, whatever happens in the Windows services, we have the event logs, right? Similarly, whatever happens in the task scheduler, we do have event logs getting recorded in the Windows Task Scheduler operational.etbx. And this is one of the most common attacks, and it will be listed under the MITRE attack. If you go into this MITRE attack, it will show that list of malware authors or the malware like who are all using like ransomware, which ransomware uses task scheduler, or which keylogger uses task scheduler, or which are all the different kinds of authors use task scheduler. All these things would be listed in the MITRE attack, and the IDs, this is the ID to check for. So how to schedule a task and how to list all the tasks. These are all the different commands to execute it. Either you can do it manually using the UI or using the script, but most of the scheduled tasks would be done using the script. That's the best methodology. You don't need to manually go, hey, I need to do a scheduled task at 12 a.m. Do you sit in the office at 12 a.m. and wait for the time to come and schedule it? No. Or you need to use the UI. Some people might be looking for the UI, but best thing is always write a script and schedule it on time, run it on time, so that it can execute it and do the process for you. So yeah, now we are going to look into the real malware analysis, like malware analysis in the sense what happened in case of one of the attack. Hathium is one of the group which attacked Microsoft Exchange servers in 2021. So they are the group who are also part of the Taurus malware. Taurus malware is one of the famous malware for specifically for the Windows task, how to be persistent within your system. I logged into a system. I want to be persistent, and I want to make sure even after the system reboots, I want to be persistent in the system. there are some malwares which gets logged out once a system reboots or once a user logs in again. Log out and log in again, you may not see that malware running because you logged out. That means your persistence is not maintained, or you are not able to be in the system part of system. But this kind of a malware, they try to be persistent. Whatever happens, you try to reinstall any software, or you try to log out, log in at any time, or you reboot, whatever happens, this malware would be persistent until unless you manually identify it and do a do a mitigation technique, right? So Taras malware, mainly they have done the persistence, so that is done by the half-time. So that is nothing but they are trying to do this hide the schedule task. How do we do it? We are going to look into it later. So schedule task. What do you feel like? Anyone knows about that? How do you hide a schedule task, or what it is and how it does? So the thing is like, so schedule task will all these recorded entries are listed in the registry files, and you know that all the softwares will have the registry files and it will be recorded, right? So the same way, all these files or all the software configuration files will be recorded in the registry files. If you try to modify the registry files and include your malicious process, and once it is processed, you maintain the persistence. But being persistent even after the system reboots, you need to delete one of the permanent configuration values in the registry file. If you delete that file, you can maintain persistence even after the system reboot. That's what the Taras malware authors were doing. So whenever there is an malware attack happens, like not malware, whenever there is a task schedule happens, the entries would be created on these two paths. This is the path for this task scheduler, and the entry would be created under the task. What is the task? And the tree under the tree, what are the task details would be there. So both the paths would be listed over here. And if you go into this path, it will tell you what are the details about the task scheduler, what it does and how it does, who has created it, and you see that it will say that it's a Windows system, Windows syslog, and all this. It would be just like it's a code base, and you need tools to debug what is happening, right? So, but the main point is these are the two paths. One is under the tree, another one is under the task. These are the two paths where the scheduled task will be recorded, and all the references data would be listed over here. And one of the main parameter is the secure descriptor, the SD value. So what it happens and how it does for the task scheduler would be recorded in the SD value, right? So this malware author created a file called calci.exe. Everyone knows that calculator is a simple calci, and it's a genuine process. Calci.exe is a genuine. Even if you search for it, it's a genuine process, right? So malware somehow reframed and changed that calci.exe for a malicious purpose, and he created a special task scheduler. And once a task scheduler gets created, it will even script file, which also says that he has created the task and the task path is under the genuine process, right? So what now he does is, this is one of the process which he has created it, and he goes to the SD value. And the moment you delete the SD value, all your task scheduler files or the task scheduler itself would be hidden. So that's one of the key point. Like you can't directly go and delete the SD value. You need to have the higher privileges. So as a general user, you can't go and delete it. So you need to go there and become a high privilege user or a IT admin. Then go and delete the SD value. That means your task itself being hidden into the system. No one else can able to identify it apart from what you can look into the logs. Log analysis is the only way where you can look into it whether is there anything suspicious happening into your environment or not. Right. So once you delete it, it's all gone. There's no records or events. Even if you look into that services, whenever you install a service, that means there will be a service record will be created, right? But here in this case, the moment you delete the SD value, it's all gone. But yeah, don't delete, like when you're trying to debug, don't modify all these values, because if you change all these values, your existing or the genuine program might be corrupted. These are all for the referential purpose because uh, when malware authors are doing it, they know what they are doing it and how it works on. So when we trying to debug or analyze it, don't touch any of these files. Just you can look into it, what is happening for reference purpose. But if you're changing it, your genuine or generic services might be interrupted because you are changing the process, how it actually needs to work on, right? So this is one of the methodology where they were using it to do it. Like not all the malware authors were looking for it. Like they will look for services or other things. But here, this is one of the specific scenario. Like Taras malware has deleted this SD value and be persistent even after the reboot. So how do you know that whether your system is being having the malicious task scheduler? Chainsaw is one of the tool where you can load your task scheduler logs, and that will help us to identify whether there is any tampering that has been happened or not. That tells you what are all the tampering has happened for which computer name and what is the target that has been changed. Like here, there is a SD value has been changed. Here, there is an ID value, index value. So these are all the different kinds of tasks or the objects that has been changed. So this is one of the tool which you can try to use it and analyze it. So yeah, what are the recommendations for it? There is only thing is you need to look into the logs. This is the only logs which you can grab it to identify whether it's a hidden task scheduler or malicious task scheduler or not. And the event ID for this hidden task scheduler is 4698. 4698 is nothing but a new task has been created and it will be recorded. Even if you look for any other logs like system logs or service logs or system logs, anything, nothing would be having a record of those specific hidden malware. Only this is the log which will have that. Even if it is deleted or recreated, only this log file would be the reference for you guys. Okay. And also, if there is any communication with the command and control server, that's the next methodology. But communication with the command and control server, that might be generic. Any malware can be doing it. Whether it's from a Windows task scheduler or not, we are not sure. How do we refer to it? That's the logs is the only way. And so the Defender, the Microsoft Defender has identified these are all the uh, key points that if you see any of these patterns, that is kind of a Taras malware. So Microsoft Defender has identified, and this has been given to other platform vendors, virus vendors also, so that they can able to defend the Taras malware. So how do you hunt for the suspicious? Similarly, for the specifically for the scheduled task. So anything you create a schedule, anything like scheduled task has been created or registered or modified during a unwanted time period or unknown user or being a high privilege user, that means something suspicious. So scheduled task with a shorter lifetime. Not many people will be scheduling a task with a shorter lifetime. You might be going for a longer process or weekly basis or monthly basis or something like that. If it is something for a shorter lifetime, yeah, something fishy might be there. Or if it is using a lolbin activity, lolbin are nothing but the genuine files which we have seen it previously, right? So they might bundle it with a lolbin activity to hide it, like to hide them into the genuine process. Not many people will have a suspicious about it. And if it is a remote task creation, if it is from the remote desktop, if it is created, yeah, it might be malicious. And this is a rare event that might happen or might not happen based on the triggering boundary. Yeah, most of the things are like if there is any task update or these things, just go for it. Right. So generic rules about protecting from malware. So have an anti-lateral movement. Most of them will think that the malware comes from external vendor or external uh, internet. So most of the malware or any attacks come from an external attacker. No, it might also be come from the anti-lateral movement. Like within the network, also cross network, also you might be having attacks that might be happening. So always look for or make your endpoints secure that foolproof that your network is alone having privileges to interact with your system. The external network might not be having the same privilege. So that is one of the methodology to make sure malware is not into your network. And always configure a least privilege model. whatever it is. So least privilege, any user it is, always configure with or give the privileges as least privilege. Based on the roles, you can increase the privileges, but it should be coming from an IT admin. Don't directly give the privilege access to any users. So, and also use strong password and secure mechanism, secure authentication, and restrict using administrator accounts wherever it is necessary. Never ever use admin account for any processes until unless it is mandatory for you to do it, and limit the application privileges. We may be thinking that only the endpoints needs to be restricted. Also limit what are the application needs to be privileged that has given to the applications, right? It's not only the whole system. Individual applications should also be fine tuned to make sure you are reducing the risk of getting malware into your system. And also safe browsing and email security and phishing attacks. You all know that security awareness is one of the main thing where entire organization needs to have not only uh, the employees, all the people within the organization to know what it is and how it is, and there should be the latest trends that should be educated. So in my organization, what we do is we try to do 6 months once phishing attack scenario that happens. So what had happened, like let's say there is a trend happening within the organization, and we are trying to change our email database server, and immediately we'll trigger a phishing attempt saying that there is an uh, email update, email server update that has been happening. So please click this link to check whether your account is safe enough or not. In that case, it's a genuine phishing process, which is correlated to your event, right? Which is correlated, which recently happened. So what you do is try to do phishing attacks or simulation every 6 months once to identify how the user behaves. And the last one is backup and restore procedures to make sure your data is backed up in a remote location. If anything happens, you can recover it back. That's it about the task scheduler and Windows service events. Any questions? Yeah, I can understand that it's too technical, but yeah, the thing is like you need to put your efforts on understanding what you have seen through, like specifically on the services what you have seen, or any malicious services or the event IDs what we have looked onto it to. So all these things correlate it and create a script or create an log pattern and put it into the system so that that script will automatically execute on a daily basis to understand if something has happened phishing, it will immediately alert so that you can take an action on it. So all these things, what else we have discussed is like it's a methodology to identify something is happening in your network. So the mitigation, it all happens like you need to write a script, understand the different scenarios or the patterns based on your environment. In case of an industrial environment, this might be different. Or in case of an enterprise organization, the scenario might be different. So fine tune your scripts or the attack methodologies as per your organization and write a script or into the log management and schedule it so that you can identify what are threats that are happening in your environment and mitigate them at the early. Right? This is one of the methodology. I'm not saying this is the foolproof. This is one of the methodology to identify it early instead of getting it into the network and blaming, say, you got attacked, pay the ransomware. Yeah, that's it from my folks.